What if I told you that one of the most powerful tools for repairing your body overnight isn't locked away in a pharmacy, isn't hiding in some expensive supplement aisle, but is sitting right now in a bottle on your kitchen counter? I'm talking about extra virgin olive oil. And I don't mean the way you already use it, drizzled over a salad or heated in a pan. I mean something almost nobody talks about. What happens when you take a small amount of it in the evening, close to bedtime, and let your body work with it while you sleep? Here's why this matters so much, especially once you're past 60. Nighttime isn't just downtime for your body, it's construction time. While you're unconscious, your brain is rinsing out waste it accumulated during the day. Your muscles are stitching themselves back together. Your liver is filtering the blood. Your blood vessels are loosening up after a day of tension. Your immune system is resetting its dials. Even your skin is quietly rebuilding itself. The problem is, for a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, that nightly repair crew shows up to work, but the tools aren't where they're supposed to be. Inflammation is higher than it should be. Blood sugar drifts instead of holding steady. Digestion slows to a crawl. The brain sits more exposed to oxidative stress than it did decades ago. None of this happens because something is broken in you. It happens because the body is missing a few of the raw materials and signals it depends on to do this overnight work efficiently. This is exactly where olive oil starts to look less like a cooking ingredient and more like a nightly repair tool. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in polyphenols, plant compounds that interact with your inflammation pathways, your blood vessels, the bacteria living in your gut, and yes, even your brain. Some of these compounds appear to switch on the cellular cleanup crews associated with healthy aging. Others help keep blood sugar steadier through the night and support your cardiovascular system while you rest. I want to be upfront with you. This isn't a miracle cure, and I'm not going to make wild promises. What I am going to do is walk you through what current science actually understands about this habit, sleep, digestion, inflammation, the brain, metabolism, and give you a simple, realistic way to try it for yourself, if it makes sense for your situation. Before we get into it, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your age and the one health worry that keeps you up at night. Your heart, your joints, your memory, anything at all. I read these comments, and they genuinely shape which topics we cover next on this channel. I'm Dr. William Lee, and this is your countdown of 7 ways a nightly habit involving olive oil may support your body's overnight repair systems, from meaningful all the way up to remarkable. Let's get into it. Number 7. Better, deeper sleep. We'll start with something that catches almost everyone off guard: the connection between olive oil and sleep quality itself. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. Poor sleep after 60 is rarely just stress or bad habits. Very often it traces back to something called low-grade neuroinflammation, a quiet, smoldering, inflammatory state inside the brain that interferes with melatonin production and disrupts the deep stages of sleep your body relies on most. Picture a factory trying to run its night shift while smoke keeps drifting through the building. The workers, your brain cells, can't fully focus on their repair jobs because they're constantly managing irritation in the background. As we age, this inflammatory background noise tends to grow louder, and sleep quality often pays the price. This is where olive oil earns its reputation. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, and researchers have found that it behaves in a way that's remarkably similar to ibuprofen. It dampens some of the same inflammatory pathways without the digestive strain that makes anti-inflammatory medications hard on older stomachs. When you take a small amount of good olive oil about half an hour before bed, you're essentially handing your brain a gentle, natural signal that it's time to power down inflammation and shift into repair mode. Here's a simple test for quality. Real, robust, extra virgin olive oil should give you a slight peppery catch at the back of your throat when you swallow it. That sensation comes directly from oleocanthal. If your bottle has no bite, it likely has very little of this compound left, and you're not going to get much benefit from it. How to try it? Take 1 tablespoon of a genuinely cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. either straight or stirred into a small cup of warm water with a pinch of sea salt, about 30 minutes before bed. For an extra boost, pair it with a small handful of tart cherries or a splash of tart cherry juice. Cherries are one of the few natural food sources of melatonin, so you're supporting two separate pathways toward better sleep at the same time. Now let's talk about something even more urgent. What happens to your heart while you're sleeping, and why that matters more than most people realize. Number 6. Nighttime heart protection. Here's something I want every person watching this to understand clearly. The most dangerous window for your heart isn't during exercise or a stressful afternoon. It's between roughly 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., when blood pressure tends to surge and your arteries are at their stiffest. This is part of why so many cardiac events happen during sleep or right upon waking, rather than during physical exertion. As we get older, our artery walls naturally lose some of their elasticity, a process that inflammation and oxidative stress speed up considerably. Stiffer arteries mean your heart has to work harder against more resistance, night after night. This is where the oleic acid in olive oil, which makes up the majority of its fat content, comes into play. Oleic acid appears to help protect LDL cholesterol from oxidation. That distinction matters enormously. Ordinary LDL circulating in your blood is relatively harmless on its own. It's the oxidized form of LDL that tends to embed itself in artery walls and contribute to plaque buildup. There's another piece to this that I find genuinely fascinating. Your liver does much of its cholesterol regulating work between midnight and around 3 a.m. Taking olive oil before bed means those healthy monounsaturated fats and polyphenols are already circulating when your liver enters that critical window, like handing the night shift their tools before they clock in, instead of making them search for supplies in the dark. How to try it. 1 tablespoon before bed is a reasonable amount to start with. If you're on any heart medication, especially anything related to cholesterol or blood pressure, talk with your doctor first, not because olive oil is dangerous, but because its effects can occasionally interact with your dosing. For a synergy pairing, a small square of dark chocolate, 85% cacao or higher, alongside your olive oil combines 2 different families of polyphenols that both support the health of the cells lining your blood vessels. I think of a woman I'll call Margaret, a patient in her mid-70s who came to me with stubborn cholesterol numbers that hadn't budged despite real effort with her diet. Alongside the other changes we made together, she began taking a nightly teaspoon of good extra virgin olive oil. Months later, her numbers had genuinely improved, and the conversation about starting a statin got pushed further down the road. She told me it felt like she'd given her heart a second chance, and in a real sense, she had. Now let's move to something that affects nearly everyone reading this at some point: your joints. Number 5. Overnight joint restoration. If you wake up stiff, achy, or slow to get moving in the morning, this next one matters to you directly. Inside every joint is a thin layer of tissue called the synovium, which produces the fluid that lets your bones glide against each other instead of grinding. Think of it as a built-in lubrication system. After 60, that system tends to slow down. Fluid production drops, low-grade inflammation creeps in, and the cartilage underneath gradually wears away. This is the biological backbone of osteoarthritis, a condition affecting tens of millions of older Americans. Beyond its general anti-inflammatory effects, oleocanthal appears to interfere specifically with a signaling protein called interleukin-1 beta, or IL-1 beta, one of the primary chemical messages your body sends to break down cartilage. By dampening that signal, olive oil's compounds may not just ease discomfort, but potentially slow the underlying wear and tear process itself. Nighttime consumption lines up with your body's biology here too. Tissue repair, including the ongoing maintenance of cartilage, is heavily influenced by growth hormone, which peaks in the first couple of hours after you fall asleep. Having anti-inflammatory compounds already circulating when that hormone surge happens means your body has the raw materials on hand right when it needs them. How to try it. 1 tablespoon roughly 30 to 45 minutes before bed. Pairing it with vitamin C, A warm cup of lemon water works well, can support the process further, since vitamin C is essential for collagen production, and collagen is the structural backbone of both cartilage and the synovial membrane. Up next, something that affects far more of your health than most people ever consider: your gut and what happens there while you sleep. Number 4. Restoring your gut microbiome. Here's a number worth sitting with. Gut microbial diversity tends to decline substantially between our 30s and our 70s and 80s. That decline, often called gut dysbiosis, is closely tied to more systemic inflammation, a weaker immune response, poorer nutrient absorption, and even cognitive effects. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's one of the foundations of your entire immune system. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the more interesting prebiotic substances we know of. Its polyphenols largely pass through the small intestine undigested and travel intact into the large intestine, where they selectively feed beneficial bacteria, species like Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, while making things harder for less helpful bacterial species to thrive. Nighttime happens to be an ideal window for this. Between meals, your intestines undergo what's called the migrating motor complex, a wave of muscular contractions that essentially sweeps the digestive tract clean. This activity ramps up during sleep, and having olive oil's polyphenols present during that overnight cycle appears to amplify its gut-supporting effect. How to try it: 1 tablespoon before bed, paired with a small cup of warm chamomile tea. Chamomile contains a flavonoid called apigenin, which supports the integrity of the gut lining, while olive oil supplies the prebiotic fuel. Together they support what's known as gut barrier function, your intestinal wall's ability to keep harmful compounds from leaking into your bloodstream. I had a patient, a retired school teacher I'll call Dorothy, who came to me in her late 70s, dealing with constant bloating and what she described as a stomach that never felt settled. We didn't overhaul her entire diet overnight. We simply added the nightly olive oil and chamomile routine alongside a few small dietary adjustments. Within a couple of months, she told me her digestion felt calmer than it had in years, and she wasn't waking up in the middle of the night with discomfort anymore. Small, consistent habits like this one tend to compound in ways that surprise people. Before we move on, if this is giving you a new way to think about what's already sitting in your kitchen, take a second to like this video and subscribe if you haven't. I read every comment, and it genuinely shapes what we cover next. Now let's talk about something that, after a certain age, determines almost everything else about how well you live: your muscles. Number 3. Protecting against muscle loss. Sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength with age, is one of the quiet threats of getting older. After 60, it's common to lose a meaningful percentage of muscle mass every year without some kind of intervention. By your mid-70s, that adds up, and with it comes a higher fall risk, a slower metabolism, more insulin resistance, and a real decline in independence. Part of why this happens is something researchers call anabolic resistance. Your aging muscles simply don't respond to dietary protein the way they once did. A high-protein meal that would trigger robust muscle repair in a 30-year-old produces a much smaller response in someone decades older. It's as if your muscles have grown a little hard of hearing to the signals that used to reach them easily. This is where olive oil's polyphenols, including a compound called oleuropein, appear to help. Early research suggests these compounds may support the signaling that encourages muscle tissue to synthesize new protein and resist breakdown, and may also help ease the activity of myostatin, a protein that essentially acts as a brake on muscle growth and tends to become more active as we age. How to try it: take your tablespoon of olive oil about 30 minutes before bed, paired with a small serving of slow-digesting protein. Cottage cheese, a boiled egg, or Greek yogurt all work well. The protein in dairy releases gradually over several hours, meaning it's still available to your muscles at 2 or 3 in the morning, right when growth hormone and tissue repair are at their peak. I think often of a patient I'll call Robert, a retired firefighter in his early 70s, who came to me frustrated that he could no longer open jars or rise from his chair without pushing off with both arms. We built a plan around nightly olive oil with a small protein source, combined with resistance training a few times a week. 6 months later, his grip strength had noticeably improved, he'd regained real lean muscle, and by more than any number on a chart, he'd regained his confidence. That's what this work is really about, not just living longer, but staying capable. Now we're getting close to the most important benefits on this list, starting with something that touches one of the biggest fears people carry as they age: losing control of their blood sugar. Number 2, steadier blood sugar overnight. Here's something that surprises a lot of people, including some physicians. Blood sugar doesn't just sit still while you sleep. In people with insulin resistance, which affects a substantial share of adults over 65, whether or not they've ever been formally diagnosed, blood sugar can spike in the early morning hours through something called the dawn phenomenon, when the liver releases stored glucose in anticipation of waking up. In a well-functioning metabolic system, insulin smooths that surge out. In an insulin-resistant system, it doesn't. And night after night, year after year, that repeated spike contributes to cellular aging, vascular strain, and a higher long-term risk of type 2 diabetes. Olive oil appears to soften this pattern through a few different mechanisms. It slows gastric emptying, meaning food moves out of your stomach more gradually, which helps prevent sharp glucose spikes after eating. It also seems to support insulin sensitivity in muscle and liver cells through the action of oleic acid on cell membranes. There's a mitochondrial piece to this story, too. Mitochondria are the tiny energy generators inside every cell, and their efficiency naturally declines with age, part of why insulin sensitivity drops as we get older. Olive oil's polyphenols appear to support mitochondrial function in muscle cells, essentially helping those energy factories run a little more cleanly. How to try it? Take your tablespoon of olive oil 20 to 30 minutes before your last small meal or snack of the evening, rather than on an empty stomach. Some people pair it with a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar stirred into warm water, since vinegar before meals has also been studied for its effect on post-meal blood sugar. Combined, the gastric slowing effect of the oil and the vinegar's known impact on glucose response make for a simple, evidence-informed evening routine. And now, the number one benefit. The one that, when I first read the research behind it, made me sit back in my chair and wonder why more people weren't talking about it. Number 1. Overnight brain cleansing. This is about a system most people have never heard of, even though it might be one of the most important discoveries in neuroscience over the last 20 years. The glymphatic system. While you sleep, your brain actually contracts slightly, opening up more space between brain cells for cerebrospinal fluid to flow through essentially a nightly wash cycle for your brain. This glymphatic system flushes out the metabolic waste that builds up during your waking hours, including a protein called beta amyloid, the same protein that forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. Without enough high-quality sleep, this cleansing process falls behind, and that waste, night after night, year after year, can accumulate into a serious long-term burden. Growing research suggests that the polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil may support this process in two ways: by reducing the background inflammation that can interfere with deep sleep in the first place, and by potentially supporting the brain's own antioxidant defenses against the oxidative stress that accompanies aging. Deeper, more consistent sleep gives the glymphatic system more time to do its job, which is part of why so many of tonight's other benefits circle back to this same idea: giving your body the conditions it needs at the moment it needs them to do the repair work it was already designed to do. How to try it? The same nightly tablespoon, taken consistently rather than occasionally, alongside good sleep habits, a dark, cool room, a consistent bedtime, and limiting screens in the hour before sleep. Olive oil isn't a substitute for good sleep hygiene. It works alongside it. A few honest notes before you start. I want to leave you with some practical guidance because how you use olive oil matters just as much as whether you use it. Quality matters more than almost anything else here. Look for a bottle labeled extra virgin, ideally with a harvest date rather than just an expiration date, and store it away from heat and light. That peppery bite when you taste it is a genuine sign of the polyphenol content we've been discussing all night. A mild, flavorless oil simply won't deliver the same benefits. 1 tablespoon a night is a reasonable, well-tolerated amount for most people. If you're on blood thinners, cholesterol medication, or diabetes medication, please bring this up with your doctor before starting. Not out of alarm, but because any change that affects blood sugar, cholesterol, or clotting deserves a conversation with the person managing your care. And finally, this is one habit, not a cure-all. It works best alongside the fundamentals: consistent sleep, regular movement, real food, and staying connected to people who care about you. Your body was built to repair itself. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply stop getting in its way and start handing it the tools it needs, right when it needs them. I also want to address something honestly. You may see other videos online claiming olive oil can reverse disease, replace medication, or work overnight miracles. Be cautious of any claim that sounds too absolute. What the science genuinely supports is more modest and, in some ways, more encouraging. A simple, low-cost habit that appears to work with several of your body's natural repair systems rather than against them. That's not a miracle. That's just good patient biology, and it's exactly the kind of thing worth building into a routine you can actually sustain for years, not weeks. If you decide to try this, give it real time. Most of what we've discussed tonight, gut bacteria shifting, joint inflammation easing, blood sugar steadying, happens gradually, over weeks and months of consistency, not overnight in the literal sense. Keep a simple note of how you're sleeping, how your joints feel in the morning, and how your energy holds up through the day. Small, honest tracking like that will tell you far more about whether this habit is working for you than any single article ever could. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments which of these 7 surprised you the most, and tell me what topic you'd like us to dig into next. I read every single one. I'm Dr. William Lee. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.